Through this class called Issues at the End of Life, and we looked at ethics, and we looked at some of the practicalities of burial and how to think about saving money when you plan for a funeral, and about the liturgy itself. So now the component that we're going to look at today is, how do we deal as Christians with the stewards of what we have at the time of our death, and how can we use it in a way that glorifies God and makes sense to you as family members. So John White is here from the Diocese, who you're a volunteer, right?
I am, yes.
And he's the volunteer for Legacy Stewardship, and he came to a vestry meeting. Boy, it was back last year, wasn't it?
I was in January.
Was it January? Okay,
It seemed like last year, after our winter.
January. To talk with the vestry, and we were all really impressed and invited to you all. So, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to John. Thanks,
Great.
John.
Thanks, Ben. Well, I'm delighted to be here, and I have a presentation, but I really would like to be, casual and formal about it. So if you have, questions at any time, just, raise your hand, and we can stop and talk a little bit about it. My title is I'm a missioner for Legacy Stewardship, and I work for the bishop, and I've been doing this work for about 10 years. And what I want to do this morning is tell you a little bit about what Legacy Stewardship is, what I've been doing, and then really talk to you a little bit about the different ways to make legacy gifts. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm a retired school principal. So what I'm really interested in is the spiritual and the educational piece about legacy giving. So just to start right off, what is legacy giving? What is legacy stewardship? Well, first and foremost, it's stewardship. When we go through a discerning process of deciding how we are going to glorify God through sharing the gifts, sharing the material things that have been given to us, with others, so we can, help God take this world the way it is here and bring forth the most wonderful attributes that already exist in heaven. Giving takes many different ways, and legacy stewardship is not like pledge giving that we do on a regular basis, on a capital campaign giving. It's a different kind of giving. It's a giving that takes place. We make the decision when we're alive, but the actual gift takes place after we've passed, after we have died. So it has a unique piece to it. And what I have found from doing this now for about 10 years is in talking to people who've made a legacy gift, it's a gift of great joy. It's a gift unlike any other kind of gift that they've given, because of the timing of it. It's a time to sit back and take a look at all that God has given us, to go through a discerning and prayerful time of figuring out, those blessings that have come to us. And if you're like I am, very often I take for granted an awful lot of what's been given to me. And realizing that we're not going to be living here on earth as it is forever. And sitting back and saying, how can I respond to all these great gifts? Are there ways in which I can make gifts that can raise up God and raise up, my own commitment as a faithful Christian? Now, I want to tell you this, that although I'm a missioner for legacy stewardship from the diocese, what my interest is and what my job is to work with individuals and to work with parishes as kind of a consultant to open the door to legacy giving. I am not here to raise money for the diocese. If somebody wants to make a gift to the diocese, that's fine. But that's not why I'm here. That we have what is called the Bishop's Legacy Fellowship, and anybody who makes a legacy gift of any size in this diocese can become a member of the Bishop's Legacy Fellowship. We have about 206 people in our diocese. What we've learned is 95% of all those people make their gifts directly to their parishes. And we've also learned that about 90% of all the gifts come from people who make wills. They come from their bequests in their wills. I've put on your table some variety of different kinds of handouts for you to take with you. That will give you some more information. So what I want to do is just open this door to legacy giving. One of the things I found out in talking to people is that people don't really think about making a legacy gift. It's not that they're against the idea of making a gift to their church. It's just that they haven't really thought about it. We don't like to think about death and dying. We don't like to think about wills and that sort of thing. So we don't even think about it. Periodically, I receive notices from organizations, whether it's Audubon or college or it's a hospital or a museum, asking me to make a planned gift. You don't find a lot of us in the church talking about that. And I think that's why I found that people will make gifts to their college or their local hospital, but they might not even consider making a gift with their churches. And many of us have been, I'm a lifelong Episcopalian, a cradle Episcopalian. I've gone to many different churches in my life. And I was baptized, I was confirmed, both my parents were buried in the Episcopal Church. It's been there for me all these years. It's not like I've just been to college for 4 years and now someone's hitting me up for a gift. The church has been here all my life. God has been part of my life. So this all opens up the door to consider making a legacy gift. I have remnants of a cold, so you have to bear with me with a few sips of coffee here. So let me tell you a personal story. How did I come about understanding legacy stewardship personally? And I'll tell you a little bit about that. Both my parents are deceased, and they died about 10 years ago. I'm in my late 60s, and I was very fortunate that my parents left a will with a bequest, and that was a terrific gift because we knew exactly what they wanted to be done and how to be treated. And I have two younger brothers. So, being the oldest brother, obviously I have the wisdom and the experience. I know just what needs to be done. But my brothers are very relieved to know that my parents had laid out some very clear instructions and I was actually really, even though I was the executor, I was very relieved because although I always say things absolutely the right way, my brothers, don't, so that's an issue that we have to work through. So that was a wonderful gift. But what their death did for me was it gave me an opportunity to really assess all their great gifts that they had passed on to me. A lot of those things that I had taken for granted. And I have two children, and they're both in their early 40s. And they have given us a gift of 3 grandchildren, 9, 8, and 6. And little Ava, the 6-year-old, she's got a wonderful personality, and I think she's absolutely perfect already. But, so here I had this connection to the future. To have grandchildren kind of takes you into the future in ways that you would not ordinarily expect. And there I am and my wife are in the middle. Our parents have died. They have given us gifts. All of who I am comes from what God has given me and also what my parents have given me. And I have my daughters who I'm really no longer really caring for. But there are these grandchildren. That's the future. And I think what legacy giving does is it helps us, going through this process, it helps us to kind of put ourselves historically into a continuum of who came before us, kind of where do we fit, and if there are grandchildren or nieces or grandnieces and nephews and that sort of thing. We're connected to the past, we operate in the present, and we want to be connected to the future. And so very often when I ask people, what is it that you've done? What kind of thinking have you experienced in making your gift? People will say things like this. I wanted to give back. My church did so much for me. It was always there for me. I want to give back. I want it to be there in the future for those who come after me, from my family, but also from the family of those who sit in the pew with me. I want this to continue. I want there to be a continuum. And my gift means that I give back to all that was given to me by the church, but also means I'm connected to the future. And that makes me feel special. I also hear people will say things like, giving a legacy gift is an experience like I had not had before. Here I was in a position of sitting down and praying and discerning and realizing that I was not going to live forever. And what was I going to do with all of the material things that I've accumulated within my life? Part of it is, being a good steward. On your tables, there's a card that says actually, be a faithful steward. And it's some very specific information about setting up a will and making a bequest. We accumulate a lot of stuff in our time. And anybody who's moved is very much aware of that. My wife and I moved about 10 years ago. And we thought we'd kind of really gotten rid of a lot of the stuff in our lives, and somehow our closets are full again. There's this ongoing kind of process. But I think to be a steward, a good steward, besides carrying out God's wishes for us, there's a very practical part about it. And that practical part is being responsible for all the stuff that we have and what are we going to do with it. How are we going to disperse it? And that's where a will can be very helpful. Like in my case, my parents' designation of where some of their things would go. And actually the best thing that they did of all was they passed on some of their special items to their grandchildren. They were able to leave a note that said, I would like, Katrina to receive, my desk or that sort of thing. And that was very special, meaning, for them. But going through drawing up a will is part of another aspect that legacy stewardship opens a door to, and that is the end of life. And I've talked about it, but I'm kind of shifting gears. I'm talking about all those things we needed to do towards the end of our lives. Do we have a powers of attorney? Do we have a health proxy? Have we sat down and thought about some of our financial needs, as we get older? If we talked about family, have we been able to communicate to family about what our wishes are? All of those questions are very difficult questions, and if you're like I am, I'm going to take care of that later. That's all going to be done later. And it may not be if I don't actually say, okay, this is time to do this. So if you don't have a will, I highly recommend you have a will. Everybody should have a will. Everybody should have a will. When we have a will, then we have an opportunity to make some choices. The truth of the matter is, we all have wills because the state of Massachusetts has a will for you, and they are going to be making the decisions for you about, how the money will be dispersed, how your material things will be dispersed. They will make decisions about who your executor will be. If you have a dependent adult child or people who are counting on you, the state will make those decisions. And the state will not make a decision about your ability to make a choice about leaving money to this church, or any other charity. So by having a will, you have that opportunity to make those choices. And it seems to me that's a good time then to work with a lawyer and figure out about powers of attorney and healthcare proxies and all these other areas that kind of tie together some of those loose ends as we were moving into the end of our life. So let me just stop there for a minute and see, are there any questions about what I've said, or comments or whatever? Or do you have any comments or questions that you would like to ask about it, about anything with legacy giving? Okay, well, if there are, just let me know. So let me talk about a few different ways in which people make legacy gifts, and I don't want to go into a lot of detail about this because it can be very complicated and it's not my field. I've talked about making a bequest, and that's clearly the area in our diocese that's people really prefer. But there are also other ways. Probably the easiest way to make a bequest is through your insurance policy, if you have one, and through your retirement fund, if you have one. And simply, it's signing a beneficiary form. It's taking a beneficiary form that comes from the company, and it's basically signing your name to it and designating who the beneficiaries will be. And that can be done with set amounts of money, or can be done with percentages of money. Most people I've talked to prefer choosing a percentage. So it could be, I give 10% of my estate to my 3 children, or 1 child, or to the church, or whatever. And so whatever that is, whatever your estate is at the end of your life, then it's that percent. So it's not a set amount of money. Some people worry, well, gee, if I put down $5,000, I may not have it. It may not be in my estate, and I don't want to burden other people with that. Life insurance, retirement is the easiest way to do that. You don't have to involve a lawyer. There are other ways. Another way is what's called, there are some ways in which you will actually earn an income. You can do what's called a pooled income fund, where you make a gift, and then you receive a yield from the investment on the stock market, and then when you die, a gift is passed on to the church. There's also charitable gift annuity. This is probably the second most popular way people make gifts after making a bequest in their will. And a charitable gift annuity, if you are in your 70s, its yield is just about 5%, 4.8%. So that means you make a gift, and right away you start earning an income from that gift. And then when you die, the remainder of it will come to the church or to an organization. It's called a charitable gift annuity. And the minimum for making a charitable gift annuity is $5,000. And that's not through our diocese, but it's through an organization called the Episcopal Church Foundation. And you can go online to the Episcopal Church Foundation, and there's a lot of very good information about doing that. So a charitable gift annuity, people who have, for example, who maybe have bonds and things like that, and they want to cash them in, then they switch it over to a charitable gift annuity, because the yield is considerably higher than anything else, today. So if you have more questions about that or more information, let me know about that. So So I want to, and there are other complicated ways of making gifts, and I just don't think it's worth, going into those kinds of details today. So let's just kind of shift gears a little bit. And what do you think are some of the stumbling blocks of making a legacy gift? What are some of those things that might get in our way of making a decision about leaving a gift to the church or any organization?
I suppose, like in our situation right now, we're just getting into really understanding how we're mismanaging our money.
Yes.
God's money.
Yeah.
And so right now we're at the point where we're like going, okay, we got to fix this. So we really don't have much beyond maybe 10% of our insurance, which we didn't know we could do.
Yeah.
To leave as a legacy. So without this talk, we'd have been like, we got nothing to give.
Yeah.
And obviously we were completely wrong.
Yeah. That's terrific. Glad you mentioned that. A couple responses to that. I remember after talking in a session like this, a person came up afterwards and said, we just realized we can give our life insurance policy, to the church, and they were in their 60s, and their children were grown up and were independent, and they had this policy that they had set up when their kids were little, and they really didn't need it, and so they said, oh, okay. And my point is that when you take a look at your financial situation, very often you find things that you weren't aware of, you didn't realize you had. You also brought up another good point about estate. What estate do I have? What estate? People who give money have lots of money, right? That's what we think. I mean, this facility here is one of the special facilities in our entire diocese. It came from very wealthy people in Fitchburg. So sometimes that's a deterrent. We think, well, I don't have an estate, or I don't have any money.
That's my $10 going to help.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that my response to that is twofold. One is, it's the act of giving that is so powerful. That's the spiritual connection of going through a period of discernment and prayer and asking yourself, I have been blessed with so much. What can I do? How can I respond to that? And it really doesn't make any difference, to you as a person making your gift, whether it's $100 or whatever it is. It's that process and coming to that point. And that's where people feel joyful, saying, I never thought I could do this. I can do this. Yeah.
I'm not on the vestry now, but I was for several years, and it was really weird. Like when things would arrive, because it was always at the right time. It would be like thinking, the budget this particular month is tight, and all of a sudden, like a gift would arrive from somebody living in Florida that. It was like, gosh, God, how do you do that?
Yeah, I know, and that's the other piece that's just so wonderful, is to be in the pew and realize that somebody just died and they care so much they've given us a gift. You say, oh my gosh, you feel special. That there's a tie to the community, and my wife's church. Had a very similar situation happen. A man died and left the church money. He grew up in the church. He lived in Florida. He lived in the he was in the military. He was all over. But he'd come back periodically because his mother still went to the church, and he started to pledge. It was not very much money. He started to pledge. He subscribed to the newsletter. He got reconnected to the church because he had all those wonderful feelings when he was young and when his family was there. And he decided to be buried there. And he left some money. It was not a huge amount, but it just, the vestry was so excited to get, I think it was a couple $1,000s, and was so excited at that point. And it really made a difference. It made a difference in receiving it and the sense of spiritual connection.
Well, I And my point is also, like, know that people, even in Florida, like you said, years later, are still thinking about Christchurch.
That's right.
That was uplifting to the best people.
Yeah.
Even if we didn't know them, because it was like they were connected to these
That's right.
people. And it was a legacy, because here we are years later trying to do God's work, and they
That's right.
remembered us. So it was cool.
Yeah, good. What might be some other, yeah,
One question or struggle might be, well, you know, what portion I give to the church isn't going to my children.
Yeah.
There might be that balance.
that's right.
You know, struggle.
That's right. And that struggle, I think, is a really good word. And I think that in this day and age where I know I mentioned my children are 40 and we're very fortunate. They both are employed. They're taking care of themselves. But in this past recession, there are a lot of parents that all of a sudden have, you know, adult children that have moved in, or people have lost their jobs. And so your question with that struggle, you know, I'd like to give the church some money, but I also feel my family, my grandchildren, my children are relying on that. Well, yeah, that's a struggle. You could, my message would be you can do both if you want to.
I was going to say, it
Yeah.
sounds like a great opportunity to teach them about tithing and to say, you know, 10% goes to our church facility right off the top, and then we do our budget.
Yeah.
It's a different type of budget, but it is still a budget.
Yep. Any other thoughts about stumbling blocks that might get in the way?
Get your money out, not of an annuity, but whatever the full income thing is.
Yeah.
Can you?
Yeah. No.
Like
What?
if your kids needed it and you had already,
No, you can't. That's a great question.
once you give it, it's gone.
That's right. You can change the beneficiaries, however. So you can make your children beneficiaries. But when you set up like a pooled income fund or a charitable gift annuity, that's set. You're not going to get your money out. But you can change your beneficiary. You can change your beneficiary for your bequests and your wills. So I mean, you people say, well, I don't want to be locked in right now. Well, you can change it. You know, you aren't going to be locked in right now. And over time, things happen. Changes happen that, you know, can affect us to do that. My view is that if you go through this process and you make a decision and you set up a bequest or whatever it is, then first of all, you're going to feel really good about it. Secondly, if you need to change, it'll be a fairly easy thing to do. You know, it's there to make that change. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, can you have a contingency beneficiary, because churches are dying, let's be honest.
Yeah. Yep.
So if something happened to this church, I could say I wanted to go, or do churches have wills?
Well, no, that's an excellent question. No, that's what you can do. You can actually make that statement that, you know, if you gave it to Christ Church, and if Christ Church is no longer, then my gift will go to, and you can name what it is. You know, absolutely.
And it could be the Red Cross.
Yes, it could be. Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Could be. Yep. Great. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a situation that has occurred here of being too specific. Money was given to Camp Menominee,
Yeah.
which Christ Church no longer has. We've had to go through a lengthy legal process to allow that money to come into the church coffers rather than to go to a camp we no longer own.
Yeah.
So it's a question of deciding, I love this program, but is this program going to continue?
Yes. Yep. No, excellent. But as I said, you can write it up so that you don't have to take that risk. You can be very, very careful about that. Yep. And I think, you know, generally speaking, the generality of a gift is much better than the specificality of it. There, you know, occasionally you hear stories of how, you know, so much money has been given to the choir. So the choir is got a great director and great robes, but, you know, the church roof is leaking. I mean, you know, that's so. And actually, the very best thing is to talk to the rector and find out, you know, the way to do it. And that's what one of my feelings about legacy giving. That what we have learned is the churches where people talk about legacy giving is where legacy giving takes place. And when legacy giving is talked about, then people talk about money in ways and they're more comfortable about it. and also it can it can end up being designated to what the church really needs, because you can, if you go talk to your rector about it, there's a lot of kind of secrecy about giving, and that's, I think, kind of the New England way. You know, we don't want to talk about, you know,
We don't
money.
offend
That's right.
because they can't give as much.
That's right. So we don't talk about it. And so all of a sudden this check arrives in the mail. Well, gosh, wouldn't it be great if you kind of, you know, if the rector knew that they had worked with that individual to advise not to give the money to the camp and that sort of thing. Yeah. Good points. Anybody else have a question or?
Well, if
Yeah.
I had already done that in my will,
Yeah.
how would you know? What's this legacy thing and the bishop keeps a list and prints it? What's the difference between it's already in my will and you don't know,
Yeah.
or I get on that list?
Okay, excellent question. The Bishop's Legacy Fellowship is a way of building a sense of community about giving and motivating people to give. If you say that you want to be in the Bishop's Legacy Fellowship because you've made a gift, here's what happens. That I send you a welcome letter, I ask you to sign an enrollment card, and then we have every spring there is an annual dinner and concert at the cathedral, which is, you know, for free, to come and gather with people, like-minded people, kind of celebrate the ministry of legacy giving. And then we publish names and thank people. And what we found is that by doing that, more people have given. In fact, what I would hope would happen here at Christ Church is that you would set up your own fellowship. We have 8 churches in our diocese that have their own fellowships. You know, where every time there's a gift, it's announced and celebrated. That usually maybe there's a little social function once a year. Just pamphlets are passed out just to constantly raise up this notion of making gifts. So there are a lot of people. I would say I don't know this. My guess is that if we have around 206 people who've actually said they've made gifts, I bet you there's maybe another 50 or 60 out there that, for whatever reason, they don't want to tell us, and that's fine. I think there are 10 people who do not want their names published, but they do want to come to the concert and the dinner. That's great. That's great. Yeah, great question.
We got somebody that did that that's on the list that died. And it kind of keeps her alive. That's just an aside.
Well, yeah, it does. You know, that is neat. And in fact, I know some churches will choose a Sunday, you know, once a year, and and have a special prayer to all those people that have made gifts. You raise them up. Sometimes if their family members are alive, you know, they're invited to come to that service. And yeah, great. Any other questions or comments or wonders? If you have any questions for me at any time, you know, you can reach me by email. You know, in the diocese registry or whatever. By the way, the other thing that diocese does is we send out mailings. I don't know if you remembered getting a mailing from the bishop in the last 4 weeks. Yeah, that sort of thing. So we're constantly trying to get the word out to everybody. And so the diocese message is, we think it's really important that people enrich their spiritual life through making gifts, but we think practically it's very important to have the financial wherewithal that come from these gifts. And we all benefit from this. I mean, our assessments to the diocese, as large as they are, is the smallest percentage of all of New England because of the huge endowment. And the endowments that we have pay for, I think, 50% of all the expenses of the diocese has. So if we didn't have those gifts, you know, more money would be coming out from your church and my church, you know, to go to the diocese. And we know that would be an extra burden because of particularly this recession and all what we're going through. So yeah, it really does make a difference. So so that's why I'm here. I'm just deputize all of you to go out and talk about legacy stewardship. Psst, come here, I want to talk to you about legacy stewardship. Because it really is a joyful way of giving. My wife and I just felt absolutely terrific when we made our gift. And so that's my message for you. That's what I have for you today. And I don't think I put anybody to sleep. I'll look around. Usually it happens. I mean, you know, when my mother, excuse me, when my mother was alive and I told her I was going to do this, she said, who wants to come listen to you talk about death and money, about dying and money? And yet here she was, somebody who was, you know, my dad died first, she died second, and she left a will. And so she was really well ahead of it, and it really made a difference. So thanks a lot for listening. Yeah?
I have just one more.
Yeah.
Just because you do that, let's say you do that, doesn't mean you don't keep on pledging while you're alive.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, it's very easy to say, well, I left her $50,000.
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't have to do anything from now on.
That's right.
I think part of your message has to be that I'm handing out statements.
Yeah. Okay, good. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's a different kind of giving. And that's what I like to, you know, in many ways it's kind of the ultimate kind of a gift, to give a gift as you are passing on to the next stage of our living. Yes, and it is. And it's, so any other questions, comments, whatever? And if you have some, come up, talk to me, and whatever. If you want some of these brochures, take them. If not, leave them, because I'll pass them on. And I think service is at 10.
10:17.
Yeah, that's it. 10:17? Yeah. How do you come up with these numbers for 9:09 and?
So we do a teaching in between.
I see. Yeah.
The numbers are odd because he figured that people would remember.
Well, you know, actually, the 9:09 really, that had a ring to it. Yeah.